All right, so it's just about time now. So I think I might get started with my introduction here. My name is Maxwell. I'm the Natural Heritage Education Coordinator here at the Oak Ridges Marine Land Trust, and I'm really excited for today's presentation. It's the third we've had so far in a series all about native plant ID. And this one is about native grasses, which is a really interesting topic that a lot of people aren't super familiar with. But grasses are an amazing part of the ecosystems we find here in the Oak Ridges Moraine and across Ontario. And we're joined by a wonderful guest today, Sammy, who also presented the Winter Wildflower webinar a few weeks ago. So if anyone was here for that, Sammy is back for this presentation as well. So I'd like to begin today with a land acknowledgement. So the lands in which we are gathered today are the traditional territories of many First Nations, including the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat people. And we'd like to thank them for allowing us to gather here today and work and play on these lands. So the Oak Ridges Marine Land Trust, 90% of the marine is privately owned. And we work with landowners to protect ecosystems and habitats so future generations can experience nature. And we use a lot of different tools in order to protect habitats across the marine. A lot of our properties are easements, which is when a landowner still owns their property. And they might live there and they might farm on part of the property, but part of the property is zoned to be protected and preserved forever. And all of the work we do, all of the sites we protect are protected in perpetuity. So they will be protected forever. So we raise funds to purchase new lands and conservation easements. Land trusts are a type of nonprofit charitable organization that acquires land for the purposes of conservation. We contribute to the federal government's goal of protecting 30% of land by 2030. We support green climate change resiliency, protect green corridors between natural areas. We do a lot of educational programming, which is what we're doing today. You know, we go into elementary schools and farmers markets and all sorts of other things. And we like to connect people with nature. The Ecological Gifts Program is a really amazing program offered by the federal government and gives tax breaks to landowners for conservation easements and donations. So you can help protect the earth and this part of the province while getting a break on your taxes. It's a really great way to go about things. And a lot of our support also comes through legacy giving and donation. So the webinar series that we're enjoying today, the Native Plant ID series, is designed to support Kirtland's warbler habitat restoration. So we have a site in Northumberland County that we're restoring for a bird called the Kirtland's warbler. They're a small songbird that spends their winters in the Bahamas, and they breed around the Great Lakes, mostly in Michigan. And they like to nest in pine trees between about 5 and 15 years of age, of two species, the jack pine, and we found out more recently the red pine as well. And the jack pines, their cones only really open and germinate after forest fires. And so prior to European colonization, Indigenous people practiced prescribed burns to help maintain the landscape. But with colonization, these practices were suppressed. And it was really devastating for a lot of these species that depend on oak savannas and oak pine habitats, like the Kirtland's warbler. So restoring this site in Northumberland won't just benefit this bird, though. There's a lot of other species at risk, including the monarch, the eastern hognose snake, the bobolink, grasshopper sparrow, eastern meadowlark that will benefit as well. And this program for seed collection is designed for people age 55 plus in Northumberland County, but anyone can be a part of it. Anybody can join, and anyone can collect seeds and share them with this site. And I'll put a registration link in the chat in just a second if anyone's interested in volunteering for this project or finding out more about the Kirtland's warbler and the habitat restoration project that we've been doing here. So I'd just like to bring to your attention before we start today a few other webinars and events that we have coming up. So the final webinar in our Native Plant ID series will be next Tuesday, March 5th at 7 p.m. And that's a webinar all on how to use iNaturalist, which is an amazing smartphone app and website that helps people identify species using an algorithm as well as contributions from other nature lovers. So it's a fantastic way to learn about identifying plants and to confirm your identifications. And then the next day, on Wednesday, March 6th, we have an hour-long presentation called Great Grasslands. And so it's all sort of staying within this theme. So yeah, it's some really fun programming, especially if you're a tall grass prairie person. So I will hand it over to Sammy in just a second.
Um,
Sorry, what was that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm just gonna share my screen. 1 second. And dun, 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 dun. There we go. Maybe I'm just trying to make it in full screen for you all. Is it in full screen for you all? No. Oh, 1 second. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a real treat to get to present on grasses. My name is Sammy Tangir. I'm coming to you from Mississauga Anishinaabe land here out in Warkworth, Ontario. In my life, I work in outdoor education. I do farming. I've worked in ecological restoration, and I'm just all around outdoor lover, and really always so excited to get to be outside. And I'm so excited to talk to you about grasses. This is a really short time to talk about such a vast and exciting topic. So I'll do my best. Also, at any point, if you can't hear me, let me know. I'm experimenting with being outside because this is where I like to be. But yeah, just if you can't hear, there's distracting sounds, let me know. I also just wanted to emphasize that I am enthusiast. I am not an expert. I'm someone that's come into this from a place of love, of learning and continued learning. And I don't know everything, and I'm still on a journey of learning how to identify grasses. But I'm so excited to share with you some of the basic things that will help you get to know some of our local grasses. So just to give a moment to promote grasses, it's very likely that in this day, maybe even yesterday, you probably have ate some sort of food that comes from a grass, whether that's something with sugar from sugarcane, oats, barley, maybe your toast, maybe your rice. All these foods are from grasses. Grasses are so incredibly linked to our life here as humans. And yeah, that's only one part of why they're so awesome. Another part, just to show this is a photo of the corn I grew this year. Very exciting, really amazing grass. Another incredible thing about grasses is grasslands. Unfortunately, globally, grassland ecosystems are impaired. And then here on a local level in Ontario, there's only 3% of our grasslands remaining. This is in part mostly because of colonization and the turning of these lands into spaces for agriculture, urbanization, and with that, the suppression of fire that has not allowed these spaces to continue to thrive. So grasslands are so special, and it's a real treat, and part of perhaps why we don't know so much about grasses collectively is because there's so little grasslands remaining on the earth. And yeah, I'm glad that we get to talk about it today. So another really awesome thing I want to shout out about grasses is we think often of forests as the places of holding carbon, especially in this time of climate change. But I just want to promote grasses for a moment to say that they really do an awesome job too. If you look on the very left of this image, kind of highlighted in green, is Kentucky bluegrass, which is a really common lawn grass. It has tiny roots, but if you look at some of the other plants that are highlighted in green, those are our native grasses and also an aster. And their roots are huge, and these roots have the capacity to hold a lot of carbon. And yeah, that's part of the story too that we can't really see on land, but under the ground is this amazing vast root system. Um, oh yeah, and there's this fun photo of perennial wheatgrass. Look at those roots. They're so big. We don't have that grass growing here, but just to say, the power of grassroots is something really special. So as we're talking about grasses in this region, you'll probably hear things come up around cold and warm season grasses. I just wanted to bring it up so that that's in your mind, and if you encounter it, you'll understand. So cold season grasses, sometimes called C3 grasses, and warm season grasses, sometimes called C4 grasses, they have different different like physiological ways that they photosynthesize. So cold season grasses generally tend to be our non-native grasses, grasses that have been brought here for pastures, for grazing. And they just have a different cycle. So in the springtime, they start growing immediately. I just turned around over here and found some green grass, and maybe it was like this all winter. I don't know, but I have a suspicion that in these warm days it could have started growing. So yeah, they start in the spring. In the heat of summer, they can go dormant. They don't thrive in the hot drought conditions, and then they can start to grow again in the fall. Whereas our warm season grasses have a different cycle. They really thrive in dry, less nutrient-rich environments because they photosynthesize in this different way that allows them to really yeah, capture energy and grow in conditions of a lot of sunlight, a lot of dryness. And yeah, this is a very general way of understanding. But I find it helpful. And when you're out there in our environment checking out grasses, this is knowing kind of like the seasonality of when the grasses are flowering can be really helpful. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But just to get those ideas in your mind, and if you are a real plant nerd and you have more to say, I'd love to hear about it. I think it's really cool. And a lot of our like commercial very commonly cultivated plants like corn and sugarcane, pineapples are in this C4 category, so like have this different ability to photosynthesize. That's pretty cool. So grass ID can be a daunting thing. I have felt daunted by it for a long time. And I don't want you to be. But one tricky bit is that there tends to be some different terminology around grasses. But we're going to talk about a few of them, and just to say that there is more. And one thing that's really helpful is if you just search grass ID diagram, you can find all these terms and kind of help you solve the mysteries. But the main things for us to hold on to today in our minds are talking about the inflorescence. So the inflorescence is the flowering head. It's like the part of the grass that's flowering, and that's usually the most unique part of the grass. And then within that is I wonder if I can zoom in here. Oh no. So within the inflorescence is a spikelet, which is like one clump of flowers, and then within that clump of flowers is the floret. So it has the palea and the lemma. These are two different parts. It's okay if you don't remember this all right now. But off the lemma, sometimes there's an awn. I'll show you a photo. I think you might understand. So that's our inflorescence, and that's a really cool thing to notice when we're walking through the world looking at grasses, is to see if we can find their flowers. And then the other thing that's helpful is to grab the stem, and if you pull back one of the leaves, there's this interesting zone. It's on the left in this image where there's the ligule and there's the sheath and the blade, which is like the fancy word for the leaf. So that's another place to really like get a lot of information about our grasses. This is just another illustration of the different parts of grasses. I like to look at different ones. I feel like it illustrates the blade and the ligule pretty well. But we're gonna just keep going. This is also just a close up into the individual spikelets, so the flowers of the grasses and what makes them up. So yeah, if you're digging into grass ID books, you're gonna see terms like the glooms or the palea and the lemma, and those, or the nerves, which are like the little lines on the florets. All these things, but not essential for us to have memorized at this point in time. I want to show this image just to capture kind of the uniqueness of the inflorescence, as well as this area where the ligule is and kind of where the leaf comes off of the stem. I found this in a little book. And then this is a photo of some big blue stem on a day when I touched the plant and all the pollen would just fall off. So you can see on here is the awns, which is that little kind of hair-like extension that comes out of the lemma. And then, yeah, our stigmas and our anthers spreading the pollen, collecting it up. And here's a photo of awns, and just to really instill what those are, those bristles that come off of the florets. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think it's wheat. I took this photo before I knew anything about grasses, but I saved it on my phone. And just to say, whenever I'm identifying a plant, whether it's a grass or someone else, it's important to just make a link with that plant, whether it's you notice the beautiful color. For me, with rice cut grass, this plant cut me. The little teeth on it are really abrasive and stick to your skin in a not comfortable way. And so that for me is enough to identify this plant. Not every grass has that superpower. Um, yeah, so that's a little bit about the grass identification things we can look out for. And I'm just going to show you some of our non-native grasses to give you a sense for comparison. We're going to go through it pretty quick. But just to say, I want to talk about smooth brome for a little bit longer because this, in my mind, I've been living in the world of grass and not really identifying any of them. And then I learned that mostly there's smooth brome around me. It's the one of the most common grasses that is everywhere. And it does have this really cool ID feature, which is in the springtime and in the summer, if you grab one of the leaves and you feel it, you can see there's this little M or W, or I would like to say B-shaped kind of a marking on the leaf, and you can feel it. It feels like a fold, and it's like a B for brome. And I have not encountered other grasses that have that. It's a kind of unique and helpful feature. And these are going to be flowering so much earlier than our tall grasses. Here's some photos of them flowering. Our Canada bluegrass and Kentucky bluegrass are really common lawn grasses. You very likely don't see them flowering because we cut our lawns. But I find that they have very delicate, small inflorescences. Here's a cool photo of I think Poa compressa or Canada bluegrass with upright bindweed, which is a really awesome prairie plant growing underneath. Other really common one, if you're a gardener, you might have encountered these with some frustration, quackgrass or couchgrass. We'll come to this one later because there's a native species that looks a little bit like them. Timothy grass you might have encountered, also incredibly common and a real challenge to biodiversity and bringing back our native flora because their pollen can change the soil conditions and allow them to thrive, but perhaps not other plants. But they're quite distinctive. Orchard grass is another really common one. People also call it cock's foot because it looks like the foot of a turkey or a chicken. So those are some of our non-native grasses. And just to say, this isn't the most articulate way of identifying grasses, but I will say that those grasses I just talked about, I have never encountered them being as tall as me. It's possible, and the soil conditions, light conditions can absolutely influence how tall grasses grow. But I will say that if you're in an environment that you know could be a place where there are native grass species, like in the Rice Lake Plains, if you are encountering a plant that is your height or taller than you, that's an opportunity to think, oh, maybe this is one of our native grass species. And there are some cultivated varieties of grasses like miscanthus and other ornamental grasses that do grow really tall and are not our native grasses. But just to keep that in mind, it can be helpful. Okay. Oh, it's so exciting. Look at this beautiful plant. So folks recognize this plant, this grass, often by the shape of the inflorescence looking like a turkey foot. And I just want to give a shout out to drawings. Looking up drawings of grasses is really helpful. I find looking at photos doesn't always distill the characteristics of the grasses in the way I'd like. So folks might know this one. If you do, you can write it in the chat. So their florets are really close together. This is big blue stem, really common, really, really awesome, and kind of like one of the sentinels of tall grass prairie. Yes, and I just wanted to also say that in the time before they flower, so in June and even early July, the stalks of these grasses, the big blue stem and also our yellow savanna grass, which we'll talk about in a moment, their stalks are like a rainbow. The color of them is really interesting, and I find it like ranges from green to red, and that is in my mind, a distinctive characteristic. Um, but yeah, we'll get there. Oh yeah, just like this. And you can see in this photo the inflorescence is kind of tucked in the leaf of the grass, and it had yet to open. And you can see the coloration of those the stems of the grass. Okay, so then this is our next really big, well-known native grass. And there's a fun rainbow in the picture. And you can notice this one has longer awns. The inflorescence is not as tightly compact as with our turkey foot big blue stem. Here we have a photo. I noticed, yeah, when they get older, their flowers or their inflorescence spreads out more. This is our yellow savanna grass, or Sorghastrum nutans. Often this plant is called Indian grass. If you search it, you'll see it called Indian grass. Moving away from using those terms, but also just to take a moment to say, like, that naming indicates to me that this plant is essential and very important to the first peoples of this land, and people have and probably continue to use these grasses for food or medicine, and also the biodiversity of the whole ecosystem. Here's another photo. They're just so beautiful. But you can really notice the inflorescence in this photo just looking at you can see the separate florets. You can see how the awns are longer. It's more broken up than our big blue stem, but quite similar in height. And often I find it hard to tell them apart before they flower. Okay, so number 3 of the big crew is well, a little bit less big. This grass is one of our native grasses, but it doesn't grow as tall. I was doing some floral surveys and we were like doing them all day. I was bending down and looking at this grass before it had opened. And I thought to myself, wow, like it really looks like big blue stem, but smaller. And I knew about this plant. I knew about this plant, and I felt so silly when I realized as little blue stem. So little blue stem, a lot smaller, a lot thinner stalks, and really unique flowers that are quite fluffy when they open up. Yeah, I feel like they're like little stars of the prairie. And yes, similar in their like colorful nature, they have some of those reds and greens that I wouldn't say I have not seen those colors on some of the non-native grasses we've talked about. Yes, here's another photo of them just looking beautiful. So those are like the main 3. Like when people think about tall grass native species, those are the top ones that we often think about. Here are some like other honorable mentions that I think are really awesome, and I hope that you get to encounter. This one, maybe you recognize it. It looks like a grass that is cultivated for food. It's wild rye. Yeah, things I noticed about this one, it does look like rye. It reminds me of that photo of the wheatgrass that I showed earlier. The awns are quite long, and there's something about the feeling of this plant. The seeds, I feel like, are quite sticky in a way, like the hairs really cling to you. And yeah, I have encountered them. People often plant wild rye in native plant restorations. It can be a really awesome fuel source to support prescribed burning. Another really cool one is slender wheatgrass. And this one, yeah, really long awns. I often see them in a spot where there's a fair bit around, but they're not like right beside each other. They're like a good few feet apart. And this one is the one that's a little bit tricky. It can kind of look like quackgrass. The things that are distinctive are the lengths of the awns. Also the timing. I believe that quackgrass grows a bit earlier. But yeah, this is one of those opportunities. If you're collecting a seed and you're not sure, this is the time to really go and check the ID features. There's measurements of how long the awn is, of slender wheatgrass versus quackgrass. I don't have it memorized. I wish I did to tell you, but I don't think you're gonna go out today and do it, unfortunately. But soon, maybe. I hope that you investigate. Another really awesome one that I love is prairie brome. Similar to our smooth brome, but they look quite different when you get up close. The florets are very fuzzy almost. I wonder, oh, don't, yeah, won't let me zoom in to show you, but there is a hairiness to the to each spikelet. And this is a photo of them more matured. Just to give a shout out, when we're collecting seeds, this is something we start to look for, how the color is changing, and the seeds are beginning to ripen. That's a cool one. Sand dropsy is a grass that I just met this year, growing totally in sand. That's a great ID feature for this one. If they're growing in sand, perhaps it could be sand dropseed. And yeah, they have the teeniest little seeds. They're so small. I wish I had more to say to tell you about how to identify these ones. I don't I've only encountered them once, so I don't have the most points for you, but if you're in a sandy environment and you encounter a grass, this is a really awesome opportunity to go back to some of the photos and even do some Google searches about this grass. Okay, another cool one, poverty oak grass. This one has a really awesome ID characteristic. So handy when there's like little unique features of each grass. Yes, of course, the florets are unique in their own ways, but they all have a similar essence, and it can be confusing. But the poverty oak grass has this unique thing at the bottom. You can see on the bottom right, there's little curls at the bottom of dead leaves, and some that are alive. And so that's something you can look out for. This is a grass that I have seen on more like rocky edges. I've seen it along the side of the highway growing. The neat one to know. Another one is our switchgrass. This is also a big grass. And I've seen this one growing along the 401. It's a really neat one. Yeah, like very poofy. And the flowers are really spread out, really open. Another one that I've never met, actually, I've never met this grass, false mealy grass or purple grass. It likes our woodland edges. And from my readings, it has this very unique kind of purple floret going on. And this is one that, yeah, if you're in kind of a woodland edge, you can watch out for. Yeah, unfortunately, some of these native grasses they're just really not common because our grasslands are so yeah, so rare and hard to find, and that I haven't found this one. But I would love to hear about if you have. And I hope that, yeah, maybe you can even grow some. So that's a lot. I gave you a lot of information on grasses. I hope that some of these things are making sense and sticking. I know it's not the time of the year when the grasses are growing. But I do find that even when I just hear about the name and see a few pictures, then I'm able to sometimes be outside and have a little link go on, or like a little light bulb when I see a grass and think, oh, maybe it is that one that I heard about on this webinar, or maybe it could be one of the tall grasses. I'm going to investigate further. Some sources that I really appreciate, like really basic grass ID, is this awesome book, and like huge shout out to Lauren Brown. Most of the illustrations I used in this presentation are just from this book on grasses. Talks about a lot of really awesome common grasses. It's pretty old, and so some of the Latin names aren't correct, which is a bit confusing, but it's great. And then I've also really enjoyed this other book called How to Identify Grasses. It has this really long poem that's quite funny about grass ID. And then it has a whole illustrated glossary where it talks about yeah, every different part of the grass and illustrates that part, which is so helpful. Oh, ladybug. Other really awesome resources. These things are really fun to talk about on a webinar, but they're more fun to learn about in person. Local naturalist groups are awesome to check out. Land trusts like the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. And also I know Kawartha Land Trust does a yearly seed collection event at the Ballyduff Trails, where there are a lot of these tall grass species, and is an awesome opportunity to see those plants, learn to identify them, and also learn about the process of seed collection. I've got word that the Field Botanists of Ontario sometimes have some unique events on grass ID and sedge ID. So worth checking that out too. And yeah, there's some info on grasses. I hope that some of those things sink in and are making sense to you. And if you have any questions, I think we have 1 minute until 12:30.
Right. Yeah, we can go a little bit over if you want. But yeah, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. As you said, it's not really the grassy time of the year right now, but it's made me very excited to go out this spring and summer and explore some of these fascinating habitats. And
Yeah, and
get
even
to,
just yeah, even just to take the time to see if you can notice these different plant parts, to see if you can differentiate even some of our non-native grasses. Um, that is a really great part and great way to start to learn about them.
yeah, I'm just gonna look in the chat here and see anyone
Yeah.
else. Someone's asking if we could have a link to the presentation, to
I'm happy to share that. If I oh yeah, I have a link. Wait a second. I can pass that along actually. I emailed it to you. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe I'm gonna stop my screen share for a moment. And um here we go. Yeah, happy to share that. Uh, copy link. Okay. Here we go.
perfect.
Do all grasses have rhizomes? That's a good question. I think so. I don't. No, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say not all grasses are rhizotomous. I can't say that word right now, but I would say that not all grasses grow from rhizomes. Like the quack grass and a lot of our weedy grasses in your garden do. But I'm not certain about our tall grass species. I think that they are less rhizotomous. It's a hard one to say out loud. Um,
Somebody has an interesting
mhm.
question here. Can you speak about which native grasses are best suited to gardens or smaller spaces like urban yards?
I would say that really little blue stem is such a sweet character and a really beautiful grass. Often I see people in landscaping growing miscanthus and other like quite large floofy grasses with these big nice white flowers. And little blue stem, I think it has some of that essence, but is a really awesome native plant. So that's one I would really consider. Also, the big blue stem and savanna grass could be great if you have space for a taller grass, but little blue stem would be a really awesome one. Um, Also any of the like slender wheatgrass, wild rye would be really beautiful too.
Yeah, my Kansas grass is bad and invasive, so don't put that in your garden.
Yeah.
And definitely never put Phragmites anywhere. Um, that's the absolute worst. Somebody says, do you know anything about efforts to use switchgrass as a fuel source?
Ooh, well, so switchgrass is one of like along with big blue stem, savanna grass, corn, etc. It's one of those C4 grasses. So people have been talking about using that as a bio biofuel and whatnot. I don't know. I don't personally know enough about it to share anymore, but yeah. Also, I don't
Interesting.
know if pineapples are a grass, but I think that they have that same C4 method of photosynthesizing. I think they're a bromeliad.
Oh,
I don't, I'm not 100% certain.
yeah, I have no idea. They
Uh,
taste good. Somebody wants to know would Little Bluestone take over an urban garden?
I think not. I think that if you're mowing and whatnot, I think you'll be okay. And because an urban garden has concrete at some edge, yeah, I don't believe it will take over. And it's just an opportunity to dedicate some more time to being in your garden and weeding out the plants if they're spreading in a way you don't want. But I don't think that they would be an issue. Yeah.
Annie asks, what's the tallest grass you've found? And Francine asks, what's the rarest grass you've ever seen?
Whoa, good questions. Tallest grass, I would say was big blue stem. That was like 7 feet tall, maybe. I think that's the tallest. I mean, excluding Phragmites, definitely Phragmites is the winner here. Um, Unfortunately. And then most unique, I feel really lucky to see this sand seed. That was the first time I saw that plant this year. I know that they grow on roadsides, but um to find such a small thing when they're flowering that you can identify them is is special. Same with whenever I encounter slender wheatgrass. I feel like that one's pretty unique, and the smooth brome. Whoa, that one's very beautiful. I think there's a question about it too. Does the native brome have the identifying zigzag on the leaves? No, no, it doesn't. So that's kind of what's a thing that's unique about the smooth brome. Doesn't have that little M or W or B shape for brome. Um, mhm.
Maria says that pineapple is a omelette. And
Mhm.
Sean James says that little blue stem does not run and that it's a great clump former. And Sean was the person who did our two past webinars on
Amazing.
shrubs and wildflowers
Thank
and was a
you.
super experienced horticulturalist.
Yes,
Somebody, Dave here is asking, in rewilding on the lakeside of the Rice Lake Plains, how does wind impact success?
whoa. That's a great question. I wonder. I mean, I think the wind could be beneficial for spreading seeds, but I don't feel like I don't feel like I've encountered or been witness to that so much that I um have anything to share. Um, it's so cool though. Um,
I think if there's any other questions here, I think does Sam drop seed run? And then somebody else asked, what are your thoughts on prairie drop seed?
oh, okay. So a friend of mine, I think, found prairie dropseed this summer. It was so tiny. Um, I mean, what are my thoughts? I think that these are all really awesome plants and the more of them that we have out in our grasslands and even in our gardens is beneficial to beings that we might not even see, insects that are small, all the critters that want to munch on these native grasses or eat the seeds or find shelter under them. I don't know specifically about the prairie dropseed and their kind of associations with other beings, but yeah, so valuable and really worth seeking out.
Those are some of the best questions, actually. I think we've had at any webinar. Like people are really into grasses and paying attention. These are very clever questions. One
Mhm.
other one here,
Yeah.
Bettina and Martin. Can any native plants or grasses outcompete Phragmites?
Whoa. I would like to think so, but it's interesting just to understand where they grow. So Phragmites, I've seen it in wetter spaces like edges of wetlands, and a lot of the native grasses that I talked about, like especially those top three, they're like our big blue stem, savanna grass, and little blue stem. They're not going to thrive in the wet spaces that the Phragmites thrives in. Um, so yeah, it's not like and it's not equal competition because they have different yeah, abilities to thrive in different environments. Yeah.
Right. I think we probably have time for one or two more questions here today. Alcha is asking, you mentioned that pollen from quackgrass appeared to prevent others. Is it allopathic?
It's actually from the Timothy grass. I wanted to do more research about it before telling you all about it, but I learned from this wonderful person, Mary Gartshore, who does amazing restoration work in Norfolk County. But my understanding was that it's the pollen and it acts in an allelopathic way towards other plants and promotes itself thriving in that those areas. Um,
Mary is a lovely person. She's part of the Kirtland's Warbler Restoration Project out in Northumberland. I got to work with her this fall, and yeah, an amazing source of knowledge. But
mhm.
yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today. I really enjoyed this talk. I definitely learned a lot. I'm excited to go out to some of these habitats and go to the Rice Lakes Plains. There's a lot of amazing sites. If you're in York, you can go to Bender and Graves Tract or Nobleton Tract to see some remnant prairie. In Toronto, Downsview Park is a good remnant prairie area. There's places like Holland Landing Prairie, a provincial nature reserve. Um,
Mhm.
Valley Drive Trails, the Kawartha Land Trust property, Hazel Bird Nature Reserve, the NCC property, and
Mhm.
Alderville Black Oak Savannah. So there's some great places that you can go out and visit and yeah, start to look for some of the birds, wildflowers, and other species associated with this really cool habitat. And yeah,
Mhm.
hopefully next
Yeah.
year is the site out in Northumberland. We'll be seeing all these amazing plants there. So thank you all
Yeah.
for joining us, and thank you again, Sammy, for being such a great presenter. And we'll see you all at the next webinar.